I'm the company most of you haven't heard at, following the Zillow guys after everybody's amped up on coffee and has to go to the bathroom, so pretty optimistic. So they bring me in to talk a little bit about how the brick and mortar company that's in an industry that has really high turnover can be a best company to work for. So my company's LaSalle Network. We're a recruiting and staffing company. We're headquartered in Chicago, so we're in the land of exciting companies, Caterpillar, Target, Kohl's. And we get to look at that and then figure out how to expand our base and get into opening an office in San Francisco. And if the Zillow guys were really good, they'd figure out how to lower the rental and home prices in San Francisco. Company number 4 for their founder. I'm just a Midwestern guy. So, I think it's important of what I do so you can see where we're at. So we specialize and recruit people in a variety of skill sets, not in verticals, but we place people who work in those departments. And we've been an Inc. 5000 company for 9 years in a row. So what I'll tell you is this. I've never heard somebody say, we have an awesome culture. We laid off 50% of our staff and revenues are down. Growth creates positive culture. It also hides a lot of mistakes and a lot of problems. So the number one word that I like to use when you're talking about corporate culture is subculture. Every department, every satellite office, every business practice has a subculture. And to quote famous baseball manager Leo DeRocher, and just bad news for Giants fans, Cubs are going to win the World Series this year. And so let's keep the heckling down a little bit, okay? It's not even April yet. And so what Leo DeRocher said, who was a manager in the 40s through the 70s, he said, you're going to have 20% of the people that love you, 20% of the people that hate you. You got to keep the 60% of the middle away from the bottom 20% that hate you. Right? And the percentages may be skewed, but that's really what you have to be. You have to look at things holistically, and what most companies have is not a culture problem, they have a CEO problem. Because their direct reports are going to love him or her who's leading the company, and they're going to think that they're a magnetic personality. But where does it stop? It's a game of telephone, right? We've all done that in team building exercises and when we were little kids. But at the end of the day, the CEO says X, and by the time it gets down to a $15 an hour person, the message is B, right? So where's the checks and balances? And while I agree with a lot of what the previous speaker said, I do have a little bit of an issue sometimes with the phrase micromanagement. Because micromanagement is awesome until the person screws up. Right? That's the problem. And we go through, if you've graduated college, right, you've had 16, consecutively after high school, you've had 16 years of being micromanaged. Even in college, you get to pick your own classes. You have to be there, you have to read the books in order to pass the classes. And God knows through K through 12, you have to do what you're told when you're there. Now you come into work, and even if you're leaving in your 30s or your 40s to go to a new company, you've never done it their way, and all of a sudden you say, don't tell me what to do. Right? There's something ironic to that. And so culture is about communication and clarity and getting people to understand the vision. And I will also tell you that culture is not crucial to success and profitability, positive culture. There are companies that don't care and make a lot of money. And guess what? That's okay. You don't have to want to work there. It's not the kind of company I want to lead. But you have to acknowledge that that's fine, because there are people that are okay in working in that type of environment. And if you don't, you have to look at what you want. And so when we're growing, it's a lot easier when you have upward mobility. I've never taken any private equity or venture money. So I can speak from an ownership base and say, if I want to sacrifice margin for a deal, I can do it in order to create something here. If I want to let people go for a reason over here and we're following the law, we can do that, right? We don't have to worry about certain things. And all of us have different challenges. And we have to look at this and say, what's good for Zillow? One thing from Zillow may be good for your company. One thing from LaSalle may be good for your company. One thing from Nestle may be good for your company. It's just finding those things and creating it together. And if it's not trademarked or copyrighted, steal it. Right? That's the beauty of business. I have 3 kids, 11, 13, and 16. I can't figure out why they don't teach plagiarism in school. Because half of my marketing and sales team, all they do is copy and paste all freaking day. Right? So let's bring up everybody's favorite politician. So I bring in Donald Trump, right? For a quick second for two reasons. And the first one is, for me, the obvious one is, you have to fire people, right? What do we teach kids? You have to kiss some frogs to find your prince, right? You have to make mistakes in the hiring process or you don't know what really good employees are like. And when managers are afraid to hire somebody or take a chance, or you're looking for the perfect, the purple squirrel or the pink elephant or whatever the buzz phrases are, you have to be able to make mistakes. The biggest thing is not hiring the wrong person, it's keeping the wrong person. And you have to be able to say you're fired. Remember, for all of you that are worried, either Bernie people or Donald people, in 4 years we get to change it, right? And in corporate America, we don't have to wait 4 years. The key is to acknowledge the craziness that exists. The other thing to realize from both Donald and Bernie, and it wasn't initially, it was the firing that I put the slide in, but what people are gravitating to those two folks for is because they're not doing political speak. They're not following talking points. They're speaking truthfully to people, and the American public is responding to that. That's what companies and employees, that's what employees want from their CEOs and their managers and their directors. Just tell me the real stuff. Even if it sucks, I got to work on Saturday, that's great. Don't tell me it's a perk. Right? We tried that, it didn't go over well. Right. Don't confuse perks with culture. Don't. They're not the same. A CEO texting somebody, an employee, when their mother or grandfather or brother or, God forbid, child passes away, that's culture. Giving somebody an extra week of vacation, that's a perk, right? Texting them on their anniversary from the CEO or their division president or the highest ranking person that makes sense from a time standpoint and saying, so glad you're celebrating your 3rd anniversary with us. That's culture, right? Giving them a gift, that's a perk. I think those are really important things to differentiate with where you're going and what you're doing. And getting back to the subculture aspect of, you want there to be subcultures, you just want to know what those cultures are. So the airplane test is what we ask all of our managers to do. If you're going to hire somebody, would you want to spend 4 hours on an airplane with them? Coach, not first class. Right? Someone tricked me up at an earlier speech on that one. I'm ahead of the curve on this. Do you want to sit next to them and have a conversation about whatever for 4 hours? I think you should like the people that work for you, because what employees need, whether they're 55 or 25 years old, they need time and they need confidence. They might have been really successful someplace else. The moment they come to your company, they have feelings of inadequacy if you have a high growth company or you're doing well, because they don't want to mess it up. And then they do things, and then you have the transparency issues, and they're protective. That's not what you want. You need to like people because you need to want to spend time with them. So, the movie Miracle, right? We can all agree it was a great team-based sport, hockey, Olympics, go America, right? And there's a quote that Herb Brooks says in real life, and Kurt Russell said it in the movie, and he said, the name on the front of the jersey means a heck of a lot more than the name on the back. So when you're looking at your company and what people want, we've gotten in this age of personal branding, and that can never be more important than the corporate branding, because when the individual employee becomes bigger than the company, you begin to have issues. And it's also true with the CEO, and I say this to my staff all the time. Sometimes I need to be away from the company for them to function without me there. And it's true in bigger companies, but most of the time, to talk about a company that's got 20,000 employees and to talk about a company that's got 500, you really are. You're not comparing apples and oranges, you're comparing apples and tires, right? They're different beasts. They're different, they're made of different, they're just different, right? So you've got to look at that and you've got to say, what does the company want to be and where's the pride? So in Chicago, where we're headquartered, and you got the Bulls and the Cubs and the, I don't know what that, SOX, I don't know what that is, Bulls and Blackhawks, we're really proud of sports teams. And it's always mystified me, even in colleges, right? You go, you spend $250,000 to go to Harvard or Michigan or Alabama or Colorado or Berkeley or wherever you go, and then you wear their hat all the time. You wear their sweatshirts. You pay them $250,000. The dean should wear your name on their chest. Right? But the thing is, there's pride about this. You have a pride in your sports teams. You have a pride in where you went to college. I mean, even these teams aren't so bad. And so, and you know, one of the things that I looked at was, you know, not everybody's. The true American holiday is the 4th of July. We're proud to be Americans, right? When the Boston bombing occurred, it was Boston strong, right? You have Googlers, you have loopers that we heard about earlier. At our company, they're LaSallians. There's a pride in where you work. So I'm on a meeting maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I've had the company for 18 years. And one of my salespeople, the client said, so if we give you a search, how will that relationship work with your recruiters? And he said, well, I'll go back to the office and we'll get a meeting, we'll commandeer a conference room, we'll have 4 or 5 recruiters who might be involved in this, and we'll get a LaSallian meeting, and all the LaSallians will talk about it. And I'm like, oh my God, do we sound stupid? And then I realized he had so much pride in what we were and what he was that he took our vernacular out in the marketplace to our clients. And he said, we're LaSallians. And all of a sudden, it made me realize that whether you're a Chicagoan or a San Franciscan or a Bostonian or whatever it is, there's a pride that you have. And some companies have it and some don't. If you can get it, then you're onto something. Because it's not about always liking your job, right? The divorce rate's 50% in the United States, right? So we know what turnover rates are. You can log on to Glassdoor.com and find out if you need specifics in your industry. So you need to look at this and say, everybody's not going to be happy, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. So how do you change a culture and make people feel appreciated and happy? So I'm not from Silicon Valley, so I have this simple app that I have called Memo to Me. And it sends me an email at 7 in the morning every day of my employees' birthdays, their anniversaries with the company, that we call rebirthdays that I'll get into in a minute. If they had a parent who passed away, if they have a wedding anniversary, because I can't remember everything, I'm not superhuman. And I text the people. Happy birthday, sorry, this is the anniversary of your dad dying, so on and so forth. And you build relationships, and I do it because I care. I genuinely care. And I think when you have leadership that cares and it trickles down, because true culture is where top down meets bottom up, and that's in your staff level people. And you build that through compassion. And then you put that on there with the mission. Because I'm going to tell you 4 values: respect, integrity, communication, and integrity. Those were the values of Enron. Right? So there's what you say and you plaster on the walls and on the website. And then there's what you practice: compassion, caring, and more tangibles: speed and urgency and client delivery, right? Because I got to tell you, when you run a company of thousands and thousands of people or hundreds of people, everybody's version of integrity and honesty differs. And you're not going to get into everybody's little world on every single issue and have to draw a line in the sands. So recruiting and re-recruiting. So how do you keep a great culture? You re-recruit your staff. It's not about attracting new people. It's about keeping the people you have, right? We all want to get new clients and new customers and new users, but we got to keep the old ones. It's the same thing with your staff. How much time do you spend with them? Right? I got to tell you, I had, I think, 1,200 texts with my son today about the Cubs. I had a little bit of time to send a text to somebody else about work, right? There is time in our days as much as we don't want to think there is. You need to re-recruit your employees, and you need to get leadership on board with that. Sense of humor. I'm more of a Jimmy Kimmel guy, but I figured Fallon's #1 in the ratings, so we'll go with that. I think you have to laugh a lot, and I think your company needs to have some defined belief of what the sense of humor of that organization is, and I think it's the most common, natural character trait of my staff. They laugh at the same things. Now, when you have thousands of people and you're in 4 different countries and different regions, it's harder, but that's where the subcultures come in. But having a sense of humor and defining that as something that's important is, I think, a very valuable thing to make people feel good about where they work. So a lack of transparency results in distrust and a deep sense of insecurity. So I'm going to spin this a little bit for everybody and tell you that transparency is a two-way street. Employees want to know what's going on in the company. The company should want to know what's going on with the employees' lives outside of work. 30 years ago, a different story. Keep it out there, come in, do your job. Now, aside from any lawsuits and litigation and overtime laws and using your phone at midnight and does that count as work, let's put all that on the back burner for a little bit. And let's talk about the fact of companies should want to know what's going on with their employees' lives, and there should be transparency about what they feel. And if a company isn't the right home for an employee, that's okay. It should be talked about it. And if you have true transparency on what people want and their motives and their goals and their initiatives, then you figure out transition plans for them to exit at certain times. But if you don't know what's going on in an employee's life, a manager thinks they hate their job, but the employee's dealing with family tragedy at home. If you have true transparency, it's a two-way street. It's not just about releasing your financial data. So we do something called rebirth days. This is the anniversary of someone's start date with the company. So it started out with, it's real easy when you have 5 or 10 people. You have balloons and streamers, and I get every employee a gift on their rebirth day. And then it became something bigger. The employees in their business unit, the subculture, started putting pictures all over the office, not just in their area, of funny things throughout the years. And then we have 50 balloons in the lobby and 50 balloons at their desk and streamers coming down from the ceiling, and then we have a party in the afternoon. Some people are health nuts and it's only fruits and vegetables and dip. Other people, they want to eat lots of, again, Chicago, a lot of cheese, a lot of carbs, right? Put on a few pounds. But either way, we do it around what the employees' tastes are and what they like and have that type of environment for them. And then we have what we call LaSalle. And this is, I started the company on August 17th. So every year we have a party to celebrate the birth of the company. Because if we didn't have it, none of us would have jobs. We wouldn't know each other. So let's celebrate that and acknowledge it. And when we're having a great year, it's a bigger party. When we're not having a great year, it's not as big of a party. But we have a party. And what I realized is we took everybody, one year we had a great year. We took everybody to Vegas. It was a smaller group. We took everybody to Vegas. The next year, and we had a great time. No one died, no one went to jail. It was a success. The next year, we did it back in Chicago. We flew people in. It was a great time. And I got more comments from our staff that they had a better time in Chicago because everybody was together. In Vegas, people were at this club and that club and eating or drinking or sleeping or whatever they were doing. But in Chicago, they were all together and they liked celebrating together. And I found that ironic. I wish they would have told me before we did the Vegas trip, but. So what can you do? Inexpensive things to create a culture, right? Not a perk, but a culture. When we have awards, right? We have Producers of the Quarter, Producers of the Year. We have a LaSallian of the Year, which measures culture and company attributes. Is we get, you guys know what fatheads are, right? So there's a company called Wall Hogs. For about $75, you can get a custom wall hog of anybody off of any picture. We put it up on the wall, right? I see a few women being like, oh, Jesus, right? The women don't like it, the men like it, and then once it's up, everybody likes it, right? And it's great. And if you ever bring clients in or vendors or partners, it really shows that's a culture aspect, because it isn't a perk. It's a culture. And you believe that, and you acknowledge that the great work that someone put in to accomplish great things. So then the next year, or the next thing we did, which is a little bit more expensive, is I believe you give people experiences they're not going to get in their normal life. And if you can do it for low dollar value, then it's better, and then you get medium, and the more money you make, the more you have to keep upping the ante, but you got to keep control of things. We got 20 horse and carriages in downtown Chicago and put them on LaSalle Street, right in the middle of the business district in the Loop, and we had 20 horse and carriages picking people up and taking us to the venue, right? People were ecstatic. It was cool. People were walking we did it at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. So people were coming from their jobs and seeing it and wanting to know. We created a buzz for not that much money, and we needed a mode of transportation to get people from point A to point B anyways. So why not do it with a little bit of flair? And then we did really well, and we took everybody to Miami and South Beach, and we chartered a plane. And the problem with that, right, As my dad always says, big gifts create big expectations. And that's the hard part. But I said to people, we're not going to do this every year. It's ridiculous. But we had an incentive. We hit it. We took everybody. And that's another thing. Every company has sales incentives, as do we. But we also have company incentives where the receptionist gets to go, the accounting clerk gets to go, the HR department gets to go, and not just to reprimand, but to actually have fun. Right? The marketing team gets to go, right? We take everybody. We're all in it together. And when you have that type of mentality, that's a culture that everybody feels that they get rewarded and they get the spotlight on them for just a few minutes. And in closing, I'll tell you, we are only a best place to work for the people who want to work at our company. If I went to a bank and brought those people over to my place, they'd be miserable. And if I took the people at my place and sent them over to an accounting firm, miserable. Doesn't mean that either culture's bad. It just means you have to find the people that are going to succeed in your environment. And we're glad to be with Glassdoor. It's a wonderful recognition and honor for what they've built and the brand that they have. And hopefully you guys get a few takeaways from this, and I wish you all success in building a great place to work. I guess if there's any questions. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that just stuff that you pick up while they're there? Is it something that you kind of ask them?
Absolutely. Well, we started in the beginning of just throwing people in a closet and saying, "When did your dad die?" That it didn't go over well. No, it's you can't do it right away. It's something that and everything draws from personal experience, right? So my best friend, he lost his dad when he was 13, and he's my best friend, right? I can say mean, terrible things to this person, right? And when you do that, you realize that talking about things is what helps people deal with issues. And I just brought my personal life into work, and I'm divorced. And I remember telling my executive leadership team, I'm separated from my wife. I'm going to need your guys' help if we're going to get through this, right? And it's that type of experience and communication. And so when I find out that a guy who worked for me lost his dad a year before he worked for me, or a girl had a dad who unfortunately committed suicide, right? Well, suicide prevention became a charity on our philanthropic endeavor. Well, that's one other thing, philanthropy, right? You have to hold people accountable. Because if your companies are philanthropic, people will tell you, oh, I loved seeing it on your webpage, all the philanthropy that you guys do. And then when you actually have the events and they don't show up, right? There's some irony there. And so I think that the philanthropy aspect is a big part of culture, because that's not a perk either. But I don't do my own pet projects for the most part. I let the employees pull from their personal experiences, and we try to support those. But it's more of when it comes up. I don't hit everybody, because everybody doesn't share. There isn't that mutual transparency even at my company. Anything else? Thank you very much.